Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Town Pump. Right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
Well, week 2, I think reflecting on last Saturday's game, it felt like it was a good effort. And at the same time, I think there's plenty for us to improve upon. And that's typically how it is. You go out there, you have guys that in some cases haven't played a college game before. In some cases haven't played a college game for us. And you have guys that haven't played a college game since December. So we have all those scenarios. You get out there, you face an opponent that they created some chaos. I think with the way they moved on defense, and that causes problems, I'd say at times, but we adjusted. And, that defensively, again, outside of a couple plays, we certainly made them one-dimensional. Not that we didn't expect that they would be that way anyways, but, stop the run, and got a lot of guys in there. I think we proved that we could run around pretty good. I think that's the thing. We tackled pretty well on the defensive side of things, and then we forced three turnovers, and so to win the turnover margin, to not be penalized, our penalties really for the most part came at the tail end of the game. Special teams wise, it was a pretty neutral type of game. Way of thinking that we played pretty clean. I do think there's certainly things that we could correct, but the effort was there. The playmaking, I think, was there, and certainly a performance for us to build upon. And obviously with our upcoming opponent being South Dakota State, we need to do that. Defending champs, number 1 ranked in the country right now, a team that now this will be our 3rd game in 18 games against them. So, there's familiarity from both of the semifinal matchups. I think we both bring a lot of players back. And it's going to be one of those games that I'd imagine I think it'll go down to the 4th quarter. And, to get there, you need to play well on both sides of the ball. We need to, be able to push to gain an advantage in the special teams side of things, but they're good in all 3 phases. And it's going to take an improved effort on our part as far as our execution goes, but that same relentless way of going about things as far as how hard we play. Looking at their team, offensively, they return all 5 starters up front, and that was the strength of theirs last year. They returned one of their 2 tight ends in Hines, and he's a really good player. Obviously, returned their quarterback, and Gronowski had a phenomenal playoff run last year, and can run it, can throw it. Returned the Yankee twins. They're obviously a point of attention. And I look at those 2 running backs. I think that tandem's really good in Davis and Johnson, and they are a different blend of running back, and Davis is a powerful guy that certainly can run. And we found out how Johnson could really run speed wise last year as well. And he looks physically like he's put on some weight. Defensively, they lost a couple guys up front, but they play a lot of guys. They played 8 guys. They rotated 4 at a time most of last year. So their ability to elevate guys and kind of really play that same style of playing 4 and then putting 4 guys in appears what they want to continue to do. Really strong at the linebacker position. All 3 of those guys return, led by Bach in the middle. And then the secondary wise, I really felt their corner play was excellent last year. So you don't see a real weakness across the board for them. And you shouldn't. They're defending champs. They didn't lose a whole lot, and that's the nature of the beast when you bring back as much as they do. So, it's good. It's going to be an exciting night come Saturday, packed house there in Brookings, and we got to have a real good week of preparation to get ready for them. So I'll open it up.
Other than the obvious personnel changes, weather differences, of course, anything else kind of that you feel is different about your team in this matchup than the last one?
Well, I think for us, that game left its mark on us last December, and I do think returning all our line D-line. I mean, there was certainly a concerted effort for that group to continue to take a step forward physically. So I think we feel like we've made strides there. We'll go certainly get tested come this Saturday. I think at times this past Saturday, that physicality definitely showed up. So that's obviously different. I know, the environment's going to be, beyond the weather piece, the environment's going to be quite a bit different. A packed stadium there, much different than it was in December. So I do think their crowd will be much more of a factor than it was on that day in December. So, there's differences, but there's plenty of similarities. And you could look at both of the games the last 2 years where there's a lot of those same players that have played and now this will be their third matchup. And they do things, much like we want to be physical, to be sound, to be able to make plays in many different ways on the offensive side, on defense, to run to the ball and get off blocks and so it's a matchup that obviously we don't take lightly by any means, but I think we got to look and have a sense of confidence too. It's not too long ago we did beat them, and although you can really throw those two games out, and this is the 23 version of both of our teams, and we're really looking forward to see where we're at this point in the season.
Zachary Humphrey won FCS National Freshman of the Week this morning. So I guess can you talk a little bit about him, the run game going into Saturday?
Yeah, I think I've talked enough in fall camp that we anticipated Scott Trey was going to get some opportunity, and we were excited about what that would look like. And it was certainly an exciting breakout for him. 3 touchdowns, a couple runs in there where I think he really flashed his speed. And then there's a couple runs where he missed where he was supposed to go at the same time. I mean, he missed a read. So, for a first game out, really pleased. I think he's a physical specimen in a lot of ways for his age. And, I think we look to continue to be able to do things with him in the run game. I think he's capable of more than that, but, he's certainly going to be a weapon as the season goes on.
This is the first kind of familiar non-conference opponent, at least that your team has faced in the non-con in your time here. I guess, how does that affect preparation, if at all?
Well, I think there is that familiarity that you would maybe get with those regular conference opponents. I think it's not that different than that. When you have a couple bank games like we do, and again, this will be the third of 18 games that they're going to be our opponent. I think there's a familiarity, but that works on both sides. So you got to be able to look at those 2 games. Play off, I guess, your performance in some regard, what you did well, what you didn't do well, and know that they're doing the same thing. So it becomes even probably more of a chess match than it typically would. So I don't think it gives either one of us an advantage by any means, but there's plenty to be learned, I think, from both of those games.
I was just curious, any player you had with Coach Rogers? I know Stigmar was there forever, but I've seen you head coach, etc. So.
Well, I don't. Friends of friends, I don't really know directly, but I know guys that have worked with them and have a lot of good things to say about them. Jake Dickert was on staff for them before he came to Wyoming. Dan Morrison was on the South Dakota State staff before he came to Wyoming. So I feel like I got a good sense for who he is. I know they had really good things to say about who he was as a player, a coach that was coming to the ranks, and probably not surprised he was the guy they passed the torch to after Stig stepped away. And I remember him even as a player going back. He's a really good player back in the 2000s when that rivalry between South Dakota State and North Dakota State really got fired up. So very familiar name, even though I don't know him personally, but a lot of respect for him.
You mentioned all the returns on offense, but I just wanted to speak a little to Gronowski and just his quarterback play.
Yeah, I think what you saw, really performed well that spring of 21, obviously, and yeah, I heard that championship game, so it was lost for the fall of 21, and there was a build to what they were willing to do with them last year, but what came come playoff time, he was back to full form as far as being able to run the football, and that's where that was maybe more of what they did with him as a true freshman that spring, or true freshman, wherever he was, but first time playing. Or last year, he became a complete quarterback. He really threw the ball well in those playoff games, on top of having a fine passing regular season. So he's definitely a dual threat guy. He appears to be a guy that has really good command of what they're trying to do. I get the sense that intangible wise, leadership, work ethic, all that stuff, that he's what you're looking for. So he's anytime, how many games has he played? He's played in 2 national championships, won one of them. That's just a lot for the kid.
And then defensively, the rushing defense was very vaunted last year. I guess what have you seen from them, I guess, heading into 23?
Yeah, I think one game, in the game where they got up 42-0 pretty quick, had 2 interception returns, maybe tough to gauge exactly where that's at. But like I mentioned before, they lost, I think, 2 really good players up front, but they were already playing last year with 8 guys. They were committed to that. So you plug and play a little bit there. I know they added a really good transfer from Iowa State in that mix. So, I suspect that there's not going to be that mindset isn't going to be much different. They allow their linebackers to make a lot of plays. The front does, so what they do against the run certainly starts with that front 7. I do think they cover really well at the corner position. That allows the safeties to get a little bit more involved at the same time, especially when you go heavier personnel. So, the root of what they're trying to do is stop the run, make you one-dimensional, much like we like to do. And obviously, I think one thing they benefit from is, in spring and fall, they're going against a really good offense too, an offense that can run the ball really well. So turning that personnel over, I guess, for them, adding both spring ball and fall camp now, I certainly feel like this new version of this front 7 is ready to go.
Any update on Wanyata, Ty, and summer, late summer?
I'll go back to junior. Junior, no update. Labor Day, so I can't imagine every place is open for business today, including the NCAA. So we'll see. My expectations for this week, I hope we get an answer. Whether that's a final answer, whether that's the answer we want, I don't know. But I think we'll get an answer on what's next. Kept him on the depth chart for that reason. Ty is working his way back, but won't be available this week. And then Lane, unfortunately for him, gets out there 3 carries, and it's another setback. So he'll be out for a little while, and that's unfortunate, but unfortunate for him because Lane's worked so hard to get back, and is going to be a guy that we're going to count on. But different than we were sitting last year, I think we have a bigger stable of guys to go through. So we'll get Lane back at some point, but that might be a few weeks down the road.
The success of the running game obviously starts up front, over 400 yards on the ground. What have you seen from that group growth wise, over the last year?
Yeah, I know we're bigger, simply put. We're a year older. All those guys, with the exception of Connor Moore, played a lot of football for us last year. And Connor, I think we tried to accelerate his growth as much as we can. So, I think a group that our expectations of them has risen. In a group that I think flashed really well with some a different level of versatility on Saturday night, but at the same time has some things to clean up. But I do think beyond being able to lean on our athleticism up front. I do think we can lean on our physicality a little bit different, and it'll obviously be put to the test this Saturday.
Speaking of the run game, Jared White, guy that wasn't able to play this game last year, kind of, what have you seen from him, his progress over the last year, and kind of moving with that?
Yeah, it's been slow. I will say that. I think there was hope that he would be ready to go for that game in December, and he actually did go on the trip with us. That was a slow go, and then we obviously, we don't win that game, we have a break, and then it was a little bit of a struggle. And even through spring ball, I think there was we didn't see the progress physically, but I think through the summer that started to shift for Jared. And so happy for him that he was able to go out there and make the plays, because we feel like he's more than capable of doing that. And he wasn't sitting maybe where he'd hoped depth chart wise, but he knew he was going to get in the game. And that's what you need at that position. You need guys that can make plays, and I think between the catch obviously and then the long run later, I think he proved that he could do that. And with Lane going out, there's I'm certain more opportunity for Jared going into this week, but really pleased, because it's taken a while for him to get back to true form, and I think we feel like he's there.
And I guess we saw some flashes in Gold Rush, but I guess what do you feel like he kind of brings skill set wise to that?
Well, he's got good size, he's smart, he's got good enough speed. I think he sees things pretty well, and then he's not that he'd be catching a lot of downfield passes necessarily, but he's a really good capable receiver out of the backfield too. So he has that every down potential. I know that, like we've talked about, and that was actually his first play. He was going in on third down because of his third down capability in the pass game, and to have that opportunity pop up that very first play, I guess it demonstrated one of his strengths. And he's still young, and that's the thing about it. He's now played in parts of 3 games, and is a redshirt freshman. So bright future for Jared, and it's just good to get him back to good health.
Speaking of Jared, that on that run he had, the 79-yarder, Sean had a few blocks on that. What did you think of his blocking on that play?
Well, he's a physical man. He's not even a young man. He's a physical man, Sean is, and he showed it on that play. He was able to wipe out 3 guys. And probably the thing that I love the most is once Jared scored, the joy that Sean showed for him in that play. Here's a quarterback that's getting a handful of reps in this particular game, but he's such a team guy, and I know he can make an impact in a lot of ways. That just happened to be one of the first times it's been blocking, but no, he's a strong, powerful guy, and he showed it on that play.
And then I saw that Zach Cruz got in kind of early before the main subs. What has he done to, I guess, get playing time?
Zach had a good spring. We talked about that at the end of spring. I think he followed up with a good fall camp. And we at the same time returned all our defensive ends. So he's on the outside looking in that 2 deep, but he's right there. And I think his play on the defensive side of the ball has potential to continue to grow. And then special teams, he's pretty heavily involved though, and had a real good night. He's a long, tall athlete that can run, and I think physically is, continued to grow in the 9 months he's been with us, just short of 9 months. So, it was a good first outing for Zach, and I think we look for his role to continue to grow.
Anything else in the room?
Oh, I guess one more for me. I know you mentioned Lane, Ty, and Junior, but any other injury updates heading into this one?
Yeah, so I know Paul Brott's, a week or 2 away. I'm thinking about on the defensive side. I know Tyson Potter's probably in that same boat, where I think we could have a conversation about them maybe being available next week, but not for this week. So we left them off. I think that's JT Reed, same deal. I think he'll be best case next week, the following week.
All good. Colton Ruana, do you have anything?
Yeah, hey, Coach. A couple from me. I know only one game worth of film under Coach Rogers, Did it look similar to what they've done in the past, or can you glean anything in terms of the coaching transition at all? Or is it pretty similar to what you played last year?
Yeah, I think pretty similar. And you're looking at, quarter and a half worth of stuff really. But yeah, I think he put a protege essentially in position at the defensive coordinator spot. Who had coached under him last year and all that. So defensively, and really their strengths I think have continued to be in the same areas. So they've been very aggressive. Like I spoke to, I do think they can cover really well at the same time. That allows them to be that much more aggressive. Play a lot of guys up front. That all continue. Then offensively, same coordinator on that side. Didn't have to maybe roll it all out in that game for a quarter and a half, but obviously they're going to allow Gronowski to make some plays with his arm and his legs, and then they're going to let those running backs really go after you too. So yeah, very, very similar, and that's kind of what I would have expected. The one thing about South Dakota State, and I've witnessed to it for quite some time, is they've all and I credit Coach Stig, and I'm sure Coach Rogers would see, he's going to follow suit. They've really adapted their personnel over the years. They haven't always been the same on defense. They haven't always been the same on offense, even though there was that relative continuity with Coach Stig for sure, but then a stable of assistants that have turned over. And I would sense that that's going to be very similar. It just so happens this year their personnel is very much the same. So I think they're going to play to the strengths of their personnel and continue to do things like they have.
In just a few minutes, small business owners can now sign up for Blackfoot Communication Services. Whether it's dependable voice options or internet services, sign up simply by visiting blackfootsmallbusiness.com. Click on the services you wish, select an installation time and date, and you're done. Small business services at the touch of your fingers. Connect to more with Blackfoot Communications and blackfootsmallbusiness.com.
The thing that's been so impressive to me watching them offensively over the last 10 years is how many great running backs they've had, but then also how they've been able to attain such great balance because they've had great quarterbacks and tight ends and wide receivers as well. I mean, how would you just evaluate the consistency of the way they are able to balance their offense?
Yeah, it's been impressive. I think impressive, innovative at times. They've had NFL quality players on the perimeter. You spoke to tight ends. I mean, obviously with Goddard being a headliner, but Tucker Kraft, I think they found unique ways to use them over the years. They've had really good receivers that have been allowed to develop in their program. They've always been rock solid, and the Yankee twins are a great example of that. Quarterback wise, a lot of different styles over the years. And I mean, for me, this is, 25 plus years of coach, with Coach Stig taking over my senior year playing. So, a long time, being able to observe it, they've just found ways to continue to evolve, maybe with the times, with some different coordinators, but really, with an underlying ability to, okay, how are we going to put these guys in the best position to win football games and then play really complementary football in all these years too. So, what their, the level of consistency, and then obviously the heights they've reached with that program, and in particular, looking at the 20 years now, or just about, this would be the 20th season of FCS football for them, has been really impressive.
We talk so much about quarterbacks, running backs, offensive skill guys, all that, but they also have multiple All-Americans on the offensive line. What do you think of that matchup? How important is it for your defensive line to rise to the occasion? Extremely important.
Yeah, extremely important. They return the 5, but yeah, 2 All-Americans in that mix to play side by side. Mean, nasty guys that their purpose out there is to get after you, and they try to do their very best to do that. And anytime you have as much experience as they have, those guys playing together, they're just an added element to our group of 5 guys. The communication aspect. working together on double teams, et cetera. I think pass pro, where those guys, probably, can communicate without communicating. But I think the root of what they do is they get after it, and to your point, we have to be able to counteract that. I think we held up pretty good in 21, and last year we didn't, and that was evident right from the get-go. And we have to show that we've come along in that regard here, game 2 of 23, if we're going to have a chance to win the game.
Brody Greavy talked to me about how he thought about this game all offseason when he was lifting. And, Sean Chambers said, hey, I know the exact moment of time that we walked off the field. So these guys have been thinking about this a lot. How do you use that as a positive, as an advantage, rather than, having it sort of cloud your vision going into this game?
Well, we're here. We tried really hard, I think, the last month plus to make it about going against each other, make it about Utah Tech, but we're here now, so you don't have to worry about, where those thoughts sit in the guy's mind. I do know it was a motivating factor for us in January and February, and then again in the summer, because our guys know we're facing a really good team, a great team by measures last year, and at the same time, I think we see ourselves as having that kind of potential. Okay, so we knew walking off that field that we'd have another shot at them. We had a shot that was on the schedule. It was here in September, and I know our guys don't want to come up short again. So what do you do about it? You don't talk about it. You just go to work. And I think the work that we've stacked up, going back to the guys getting back in January, has been significant. And at the same time, I'm certain the work that they've done with all their returners is significant too. So, we have to be up to the task, and we have to be able to make enough plays in all facets. Both with our physicality, but then also with our athleticism to get that game, into the fourth quarter. And that's our aim. And it's gonna take a really good performance for it to play out like we want it to.
And last one for me, I know we're going to talk to him here in a minute, but I want to ask you about Kenneth Iden, because he was such an unbelievably productive player in high school. I mean, one of the most productive I've ever covered. Now he's becoming a productive player at the college level. So how has he been able to make that transition? What have you thought of his growth?
Yeah, I think, looking back, his transition really had a rough first fall, because he was injured a little bit, but you could see things starting to happen that true freshman spring. And I think we were smart about how we utilized him last year. That was a growing process, but he's a guy that has an excellent motor. I think for a D lineman, he plays with great leverage. He's strong, he's fast, he's tenacious, all those things. And we got to find ways to put in position to match him up well, because he can be, and I think it's showing that he's a playmaker up front. And we need that out of Kenny. And I think the growth for him, going back to even the beginning of last season, is just going beyond a guy that can flash, going to a guy that can flash and make plays, but then also is consistent and not busting assignments at the same time. And I think there's a maturity that's there that young players kind of go through. I think young D linemen, especially guys that probably were all about just going to seek the ball when they're in high school, that's a tough transition. You got to play within our scheme, and it takes a little time. And I do think Kenny's there though, and he's a guy that, beyond kind of being more of a specialist last year, might be a third down specialist. He's an every down capable guy now. And, we really need him to be a force, not only this week, but as the season goes along.
Alex, do you have anything?
I am all good. Everybody asked all of my questions, but it's so good to see you, Coach, and everybody. I wish I was there in person, but
All right. Good to
thanks
see
for
you.
letting me hop on here
For
this
sure.
week.
Zach, do you have anything?
Yeah, just to Coach. I'm Zach Borg from Dakota News Now out of Sioux Falls. You kind of touched on the lines real quick. Is that maybe one of the biggest differences you've noticed with South Dakota State, even going back to your time at NDSU? I mean, they've always kind of had those skill players, but when they were a team that was maybe just couldn't get out of the second round or couldn't get past the semifinal, they maybe got worn down against the James Madisons or NDSUs. Is that the big difference that you've maybe noticed, is they have that depth along both their offensive and defensive lines now?
Yeah, the depth maybe is the deal. I know, thinking back, 11, 12, 13, we had some real dogfights with them, mostly because they were good up front, but to your point, they maybe didn't have the depth. Depth creates continuity from one year to the next. And they was intentional how they played their defensive line last year. And, you didn't see, even though you're taking an All-American off the field, or maybe even a couple, between Sanders and Winkleman, I think were the names, 99 and 97, you were taking them off, but you weren't seeing a real drop off, so then that's why you know that they can plug and play moving forward. And I know they've gotten in that same mode up front, but going back quite a while, I mean, that was always something that as coaches, we never took for granted, was that matchup. And that's, I think we had some really good, speaking specifically offensive lines at NDSU that threw my tail end there. And this was probably the team that we struggled with more than anybody. But to their credit, they've continued to build it. Success breeds success. Their facility enhancement over the course of the last decade, I'm sure, is part of that. But just the stability within that program, the more you win, the more you can build upon that. They're in a different place, but boy, I always respected what they had up front going back to those last several years at NDSU too.
And finally, obviously, we know both of these programs have rather large conference rivalries. You could argue that are probably the most important in the FCS, but when these two programs have now played each other in huge playoff games with the potential for there to be more in the future, and I know there's a return game here in a couple of years in Bozeman, kind of feel like maybe there's a little bit of a budding non-conference rivalry here between these two, considering the landscape and what we're kind of what we've already seen kind of develop here in just really 2 short years.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's clear to see the programs that have shown consistency to be at the top of this level. And, I think fortunately for us, we put ourselves in that conversation. So, to be where you want to be, you can't shy away from these matchups. I know the other two have come in the semifinals. We'll have this regular season matchup. We'll have one in a couple of years down the road. I think there's a lot of respect between the two programs, and absolutely, we know this is an important game, I guess, if that's ultimately what a rivalry means. I mean, this is important on a lot of ends. It's not going to make or break the season for any team or either team, but it's this early in the season, it's an absolute gauge of where you're at in the grand scheme of things. And I'm certain we both have very similar goals when it comes to the grand scheme of things. So, excited for our team. I know my first 2 years we played an FBS game in the non-conference, and those were exciting in their own right. But this, is a different feel, I think, for this, not only because we played them twice, but there's also the potential that, you could play them down again. It doesn't usually stack up this way, maybe in the FCS, that you get these type of matchups on the heels of what we've had the last couple of years out of conference, but here it is, and we're embracing it.
In just a few minutes, small business owners can now sign up for Blackfoot Communication Services. Whether it's dependable voice options or internet services, sign up simply by visiting blackfootsmallbusiness.com. Click on the services you wish, select an installation time and date, and you're done. Small business services at the touch of your fingers. Connect to more with Blackfoot Communications and BlackfootSmallBusiness.com.